We're in outposts, so I was mostly in a place called Sangin, in the Sangin Valley. There was a whole sequence of events that followed, really, that ended up in me getting medically discharged from the military. I come back from Afghanistan. I was diagnosed with cancer. Shortly after that, I began pissing blood, basically. So I was 21 at the time, and I thought the cancer had spread to my organs, essentially, and I was going to die. I was struggling with a lot of the things that happened. I just couldn't quiet the voices in my mind. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking extremely heavily, and it all accumulated in a failed suicide attempt.
On this episode of the Elite Podcast, I speak to Andrew Williams, former paratrooper, MI5, firefighter, and author. Andy, how are we doing?
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure to meet. It's the first time we've actually met, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. We've got some mutual connections, but yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, you're
face
in the
to face.
Yeah, you too as well. So you're in the airborne business group, aren't you? That's where we.
Yes, yeah, through Smudge, and obviously we were both in 3-para at some point together.
Oh, you were you were 3-para then as well?
Yeah,
right. I thought you were 2-para for some reason. Oh,
yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, obviously my battalion as well.
So yeah, I was obviously a crow to you, but you know, as you were getting out, I was getting in.
Yeah.
Back in 2002. So yeah, it feels like a long time ago now.
Brilliant. So when you went through training, then you would have gone through the Litchfield Catterick, or they just moved it to just Catterick at that point.
Yeah, it was all up at Catterick.
They just moved. Yeah, they just started moving it, hadn't they, at that point?
Yeah, but I was 16 and 9 months to the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, when
were you? So you were as young as you could have got in.
Very young, yeah. And
Uber Mong, then were you?
Yeah, well, yeah, just head full of mints, you know, fit as a butcher's dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I went to the careers office, they tried to steer me in the direction of the Army Foundation College at 15. But yeah, I decided to wait and then go into Catterick at 16 and 9 months.
Yeah, well, you survived it, so
yeah,
it makes a man of you.
Yeah.
yeah. But,
just about.
Yeah, so that's a daunting experience, though, to do at such a big thing at such a young age. And there's mixed reviews of the college as well, isn't there? Some people think it's great, and then some people think it's a bit of a playground, and that it doesn't set people up for the Parachute Regiment in any way. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, I get the reasoning for the college. I was so desperate to get out of my hometown and village, and I just sort of took naturally to it. I didn't realise how. It was only when I look back now. My son's 17 now, and I think I couldn't imagine him being in the military. You're in a alpha male's world, aren't you? Ultimately, so. Yeah, you grew up very quick. I was already living on my own at that point, so I could iron, cook, clean, polish my boots. So I was well equipped for Para Depot, really.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great. Well, that's interesting. You're saying that you're living alone. So let's maybe progress back a little bit then to when you were younger. Where did you grow up and everything? And how did that go?
So yeah, I had a fairly unorthodox childhood, you could say. So I grew up in North Wales for the most part, on the coast. But as a kid, my father always worked away from home. He actually worked in Saudi Arabia as a petrochemical engineer, and so I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. And my brother had just left home at 17 to join the Royal Marines. And then at the age of 3, my mother abandoned us. So she walked out the house one day and didn't come back.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, she wasn't a very good person. So she was an alcoholic, and she had quite violent tendencies sometimes as well. So my sister and I relocated to Saudi Arabia when I was 3 years old. And we spent a few years there. And then when my sister was 16, we returned back to North Wales, and she became my surrogate mother and raised me as one of her own. So yeah, there's 12 years difference between us. And we stayed in an old council flat in North Wales, and then from the age of, I think I was about 5, and went to school and went on from there.
Wow! So it didn't work out in Saudi then with your dad?
No, I have really fond memories of Saudi, especially as a young kid, because it's
so different.
It's a place so different to what we know. And every summer holidays, I would go back there for 6 to 8 weeks of the summer holidays. I'd normally miss the last week of school or the first week back at school. And I would spend the whole of the summer there up until the age of about 15.
Okay, so you still had quite a close relationship with your dad then? He was still involved in your life?
Yeah, he was.
But from a distance, really? From a
distance, yeah. I've never actually lived with him other than when I was very young. He's always worked. So yeah, and I loved it. I mean, what an experience for a young lad just to experience that, a culture so different from your own.
Were they quite friendly over there? Did you find?
So we lived on a western compound, so there wasn't much there. It was in the middle of the desert, just outside of Riyadh, and there wasn't really much there other than they had an outdoor pool, a shop and a restaurant, and a video rental store.
We got a video rental store and a pool as a kid. That's what you need, isn't it?
So you got everything you need. And I would just spend the days in the pool, and he still worked long hours at the polyethylene plant where he worked. So I would just entertain myself for the most part. But yeah, I loved it. And I think from an early age, that probably instilled a sense of adventure and curiosity in me for experiencing different cultures and traveling the world.
Yeah, of course.
So it was a long way away from North Wales village.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you did a couple of years there then, and then you was going back every summer for like 2 months. Is that right?
Yeah. And then so when I first started going over there, he introduced me to, there was another compound just down the highway, and one of his foremen was a Filipino engineer, and he was actually a fourth Dan in Filipino combat Aikido. So from the age of, I must have been about 7 or 8 when I started, every time I went to Saudi, I would try and get another belt, and I'd spend the evenings in this really humid dojo with no AC, just a few fans, and I was the only Westerner there. And I loved it. I loved it and learned Aikido.
Brilliant.
Ultimately.
Yeah, sounds good.
It was great.
So, and then you moved back to Wales then. Your sister was just 16. Did you? Yeah. So I'm assuming she managed to get some type of council house or something. Was that allowed to be your guardian at 16? No. How did you get around that?
So bear in mind, this is the late 80s. Yeah. So the house was an old council house that my nine, or my father's mother, owned, and we stayed.
So they just sorted it out for you, basically, somewhere to go.
Yeah. So moved back to North Wales, and it was great, but there wasn't a lot going on in North Wales.
Getting pregnant and taking drugs is all they seem to do, and having fights.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. So
excuse the stereotype if you're from North Wales.
Yeah,
obviously.
North Wales is amazing, and especially back then on the coast, it was a beautiful place to live. But I've just really wanted to get out and experience the world.
Yeah, when the 80s as well, it's probably its heyday, wasn't it? I think it doesn't look like it's been, a lot of it doesn't look like it's been revamped since then, does it?
Oh, it's still the same. Yeah.
You go to Rail or to Barmouth and stuff, it's the same kind of as it looked in the 80s and the 90s, I think, isn't it?
Well, that's where I'm from, near Rill.
Yeah.
Right on the coast. But but I love it. And you come inland as well, it's stunning, but there wasn't a lot going on there. And most people I was in school with, my friend group either joined the military. Well, it's funny actually. Half us joined the Royal Marines, half us joined the Parachute Regiment.
You said your brother was in the Royal Marines as well.
Yeah, so he's a lot older than me, and at one point I considered it. As you can imagine, as a young kid, I didn't really have anyone to look up to or to role model myself off. I did look up to my brother, but I didn't see him a lot of the time. I got into boxing at quite a young age as well, and when I got to an age where I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I just thought I didn't want to follow in his footsteps and copy him. I wanted to do my own thing.
Create your own legacy.
Yeah, and at that time I was in the Army Cadets, and I saw the Maroon Beret, and I learned a bit more about the history of the about the Parachute Regiment, and made up my mind that was what I was going to do. You get
quite a lot of siblings. I know a good handful of siblings where one is in the Marines and one is in the Paras.
Really? Right.
Yeah, that's not unusual, is it? For that reason.
Yeah.
We've got a friend in our friend group, and all the lads went to the Paras. Apart from one of them, he decided to join the Marines. I think for that reason, really. So he's like, he's not the odd one, but they're good guys, aren't they? Do you know what I mean?
And it's all. I think it makes it better ultimately because it's all friendly banter and competition, and it's the great.
It is
great
now.
unit.
I think when I was in, they didn't do any work. They never worked with the Marines at all. So when you got in, SFSG. Had that started at that point? But it was about them, wasn't it? It was about 2003.
Yeah, it was. So it was. I think it was as we were coming back from Helmand, Afghan in 06.
Yes.
Because I remember when it first.
Oh, was it that late? Was it? Yeah. No, I was out then, so I wasn't. Up to date with it all.
And we a lot of our we just sent guys from battalion that. We just filled the numbers initially. We just backfilled the numbers, and then I think as they become busier, more people wanted to transfer.
So you get the better versions of them. Then the Marines failed the Rangers and everything to start with, though, didn't they? When they moved them over, I think they just sent all their biffs and all the ones getting out, didn't they? Made a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
However, that was something that they've got the Parachute Regiment have over them that they surely use as ammunition at any time they need it.
Yeah.
So you joined up then into the Parachute Regiment in 2002 at the age of 16 and 9 months, is that right?
Yes, 16 and 9 months into Catrick. And
what platoon number was that?
479. I think it was 479. Yeah, it was around then.
579. I was 598.
679.
679.
679. It's been a while. Yeah, 679. That rings true. Yeah, 679. And I loved it. So towards the end of before I joined the Parachute Regiment, my sister married, and she sort of semi-moved out. So I had the flat to myself for quite a while. So I didn't used to go to school. I would bunk off school, and my friends and I would go and do these elaborate training exercises on the North Wales beach. And
that's good. At least you weren't taking drugs or getting drunk or anything then. Just going out and thrashing yourselves.
Yeah, just before school, or if we went to school at all. We had half a telegraph pole with some blue rope tied around the ends, and we would carry it on the North Wales coast at 5 a.m, and then get in the sea and do burpees. And I was obsessed. Yeah. I was completely
you have to
driven.
Be, don't you? Yeah, you have to be. It's that shit in training. If you're not, you're just going to wiggle out somehow, aren't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just think, I think to my mindset back then, there was no way I was going to fail it. There was just, I was that completely obsessed and driven with passing, and just being accepted. It just failure wasn't an option. I know it's the old cliche. And that, I wasn't, I was very happy to leave North Wales. I wasn't homesick. I never used to go home during training. I'd just stay either on the camp or I'd go to somebody else's hometown.
Yeah. You get quite a few of the blokes that are like that. A lot of the blokes come from broken homes or that don't have a great your kind of family unit to come to, and the army does become that family. Did you find that then?
Yeah, absolutely. And the likes of Smudge that we were talking about before, I looked up to these people as,
like you would big brothers, don't you? Yeah,
absolutely. And I took to it. I loved it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was very difficult at times, but I just sort of fully embraced myself with the whole of the training. I was the youngest in the platoon by quite a long way. And every aspect of it, the soldiering, the field craft, the fitness, I thrived in that environment.
Did you? You didn't struggle then because of your age? Because some of the really young ones, sometimes, they just need another year or two and a bit of life experience. But by what you said, you were self-sufficient anyway, ironing. A level of responsibility was forced upon you, I suppose, in your situation. So you probably wasn't overwhelmed by that as you can be when you're young. Yeah,
so I think it gave me a good head start in terms of I could look after myself. I was very independent at that age. The stuff in the field was a bit more of a challenge, like the sleep deprivation.
That's the hardest bit, I think, for me.
Yeah,
that's like the sleep deprivation and the cold as well, because I'd never been. No one's ever been that cold, really, to join the military, have they? And like, you're that cold, you think you're going to die. The first night on stag, I was like, and then you don't, you survive the morning, and then you get to do it all over again every night on the exercise, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's just disgusting.
It's just another level of fatigue and and coldness, and sleep deprivation is so destructive, isn't it? And so I think that more than anything. But the training was great, and unfortunately I didn't get any injuries or anything like that.
Yeah, lucky. Yeah, it is lucky. Lucky dip in it sometimes. It is luck of the draw. Because how many good blokes did you lose from injuries?
Oh yeah, loads.
You could make a whole of the regiment, couldn't you? Just of all the blokes that didn't quite make it, that would have been exceptional still.
Yeah.
So many good people that don't get through. And I know they work hard. They've changed things quite a lot now to like in depot. Because we used to run every morning, didn't you? Every morning for the first like so many weeks, 6 weeks or whatever. And then before you started tabbing. And every one of them was tough when I did it. I'm sure it's pretty similar to when you did. Now they've took all the runs out.
Really? I didn't know.
Jump mileage, just tabs, straight into tabs.
Oh, right, okay.
But you run on, I know I don't like that. You still run on the steeplechase, and you do your RFTs now, they're called, instead of BFTs, and you run when you do this, that and the other. And there was like a familiarisation run. I think that's been taken out. They're changing it again now though, because I don't think it was working. But the whole army in general has took all the jump mileage out. So, which is to prevent injuries, which is what they're saying, and extend the longevity of the soldier's career. Because again, I've got a new hip. We're all fucked up. Everyone that joined up in the, when I did in the 90s and the early 2000s. Yeah. And obviously even more so beforehand, because they seem to be getting better and better. But I think there's a point of there's definitely got to be a Goldilocks zone of where you can like improve things, but still keep it as resilient and as active as possible. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I think like you were saying, there's definitely a lot more knowledge and understanding and education in terms of getting the best out of a recruit, and not just thrashing them and you just get on with it. Yeah,
definitely is there, because I go to the depot every year because I've trained the 4 para recruits now. Yeah. So I pop up there. I just love to be up there, and I like to meet who's currently up there and be there for the recruits as well, like to get them through. But the level of professionalism with the instructors is exactly the same as there's no difference. Like, they are brilliant, the guys that are there. Yeah. But they're mentors as well, though. Now they're better mentors. Saying that though, our guys were as well. We did have some, but you'd have some that were just fucking bullies, and they would just break you. And it didn't feel like they're on your side, did it? You felt like they were all against you. Yeah. And you can see, I don't know whether it's just that I see behind the curtains now, because I know the staff, and you're in the staff room, and you know that there's an element of pushing and pulling coming on. Do you know what I mean? But you just don't feel like that when you're a Joe. You just feel like everything's against you and everyone's trying to break you, don't you?
Yeah, it's more stick and less carrot.
Yeah, definitely.
Big stick, learn quick, as they used to say.
Yeah, definitely. So you passed out, and then you went to 3 para.
Yeah, 3 para B company.
So I went to first B company.
That's right.
Yeah,
so
6 platoon B company.
So I was 4 platoon. Yeah, and at the time, before I left the depot, I really wanted to go to 2 para, because my PTI at the time, Dan Shirley, unfortunately has passed away now. I really looked up to him and admired him, and he was ex-2, well, he was 2 para, so that's where I wanted to go. But at the time, 2 para were in Northern Ireland, and I couldn't deploy because I was 17.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So, I went to 3 para, and then things started happening for the Iraq invasion in 2003. And I missed the boat because I was 17. So I formed part of the rear guard, along with everybody else that couldn't go for various reasons, either injuries, court cases, they're too young. And then as we turned 17, the guys were getting flown out to Iraq for the invasion.
How did that feel to miss that?
Oh, it was gutting.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was you up for it? Did you want to get stuck in?
Absolutely.
And get in there? Yeah.
As we know, the number of operations the British Army have been involved with, limited, and any chance for it to deploy as a soldier, you're going to throw yourself at that, aren't you? Because it's what you joined to do ultimately. So it made it even more difficult to integrate into the platoon, into battalion, because you're considered, even though it's through no fault of your own, you're a war dodger, aren't you, when they come back, when they came back. So unfortunately I missed that one. I ended up going back to Iraq a year or two later on a different, still optelic, but we backfilled the Royal Anglian Regiment. But yeah, so not long after joining battalion,
so you still got your medal then for it.
I got there in the end, so it all counts, although it weren't for the invasion. But it's just one of those things I had to accept because it was no through fault of my own. I just was too young. If they'd have given me the opportunity, I'd have been out there. And I actually spent the first year in battalion on the boxing team.
Did you?
So
that's a good way to get accepted, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and because you're mixing with senior guys, and if they.
So what, the battalion boxing team or the company? So
it was the inter-company championship.
New blokes, I go. How much do you weigh?
You're young, you're fit.
Yeah,
get
you're on
there. And I did well at the inter-company boxing.
How'd you get on?
We won. B Company won.
Yeah.
We won the battalion tournament, and then I got asked to box for battalion at battalion level.
Brilliant. Free power as well. The best boxing team in the British Army.
As far as I'm aware, the first year that we won the Army Boxing Championship was the first of a 10-year streak of free power winning.
I was out then. I remember hearing about it and thinking, bloody hell, the guys are still representing well. Then that's great.
We had an unbelievable team.
Do you want to say some of the names of some of the blokes that were in the team at the time?
Yeah. So the head coach was Ned Cameron.
Yeah.
So he was, I believe he was a Lance Jack during the Falklands War. So he was, he was well at the end of his career, but he was an unbelievable boxing coach. We had former really high-level amateur boxers. So South Walian from the Rhondda Valleys called Sean Bowers. He was an unbelievable boxer.
Welsh guys are tough though, aren't they? They always are, aren't they?
He had something like 200-300 amateur bouts under his belt.
How was he allowed to fight for the battalion? I thought you had to have under 10 fights.
Well, you can, He was one of the coaches, but he did have a few fights.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
I'm trying to think back to the team.
So he's one of the coaches. Flipping out, what a wealth of experience that is.
Yeah.
200 or 300 amateurs.
We had Baz Hawthorne, who was an ex-pro fighter that joined battalion as a coach. Glaswegian guy, unbelievable guy. Dunk Armstrong, another ex-pro fighter. Graham Hay, I think he went on to be, he was sort of major in 3 para. He might even still be in. He was a heavyweight boxer. No one could touch him. And
was he a ringer then, was he? Every time?
He was just almost like a guaranteed a win. And
when you're working out the wins, they're definitely going to win these ones. Yeah.
But we had, so we went all over, went to Germany. We used to go across to a gym in Harwich and fight some of the England team amateurs. But I was a welterweight at the time, although you wouldn't believe it now, so 69 kilo. And we had about 4 or 5 guys competing for that weight category. Yeah. So the training sessions,
it's a very competitive weight section that is, though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
yeah. Because most of the blokes probably walking around at like 75. What was you walking around at?
Yeah,
or
so
even heavier probably, and which is the average height and size and weight of probably most of the young blokes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, for the inter-company, I actually boxed at welterweight, which was too heavy for me just because of my height. I felt like I was strong and I did all right, but I went down to 69. But just the training sessions alone, I mean, as you know, we were tracksuit soldiers. It was like being a professional fighter. We had our own cookhouse times to eat. We had tracksuits. We just trained and every that's all we did.
Bowling around camp, not saluting anyone in trackies.
Yeah, just
doing what you wanted.
But it was brilliant, and I think going back to what we were saying before about there's a lot more knowledge and understanding now. There was no weight cutting. It was just you will make that weight, no matter what.
Burpees in the sauna.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember having a big Londis bag full of just junk food. So and immediately after you weigh in, you just scoff in your face with chocolate and crisps, and then you usually throw up because your body's just not used to all those sugars. But there's
definitely more intelligent ways of doing that now, isn't there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it can't be good for you.
No.
But it was like I say, just the spars. They were bouts in themselves because we all wanted the first and second string welter. We all wanted that slot. So we put everything into those amazing fights.
That's amazing. To have represented 3 para has got to have been one of the highlights as well, I'd imagine, of being in the military for you, because it is the best boxing team in the British Army. It's had 16 wins over like 18 years or something, hasn't it?
Is that what it's at?
It was something, I don't know, don't quote me exact, I'm paraphrasing, but it was definitely, I remember a string, they might have like lost one within the 16, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And then, or they haven't been able to compete because 2 para going up, they don't put 2 and 3 para together, do they? Which I think is unfair because then Parachute Regiment would win it all the time, wouldn't they? But I think that's why they don't do it, isn't it? It's one of the battalions or the other, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got to give the other regiments a chance, haven't we?
Yeah, of course, that's it, yeah. So that's brilliant. So you did that then, and then after that, you...
so I got to a point where I got asked to do the individuals to represent the army. But,
oh, wow, so you went to that level? You could have gone to that level then?
Yeah, but I chose not to because... I mean, I'd only been in battalion about 18 months, and I wanted to soldier. I wanted to be a soldier and be part of a platoon. So
you don't want to leave the regiment. You have to leave the regiment for that, don't you? You're not actually in the regiment.
Yeah,
you're owned by the army boxing team, aren't you? At that stage, you're not going to be based in the camp or anything, are you?
And as you know, as a junior soldier just joining the battalion, it's probably not the best thing for your career.
No,
I think they were training and fighting out of Aldershot in the gym there, but the battalion were due a Northern Ireland deployment to West Belfast for the marching season. So I managed to get back into the platoon and get on that deployment, which I was keen to do. It felt like I'd not really done much soldiering since joining the battalion. So, and as you know, it's hard work on the boxing team. As good as it is cutting around in tracksuits, you're constantly watching what you eat. You're not going out and drinking. You're training 3 or 4 times a day. So I think for me at that time, it was the right decision. We went out to Northern Ireland. We did all our beat up training in Ivan Lid.
The build up training for Ireland was brilliant. Some of the best stuff I'd done in the army. I really enjoyed it. Really extensive training for months before we went out. When we did it in '97. I'm sure it's changed somewhat now. The ranges that we used to walk around with all the dummies and interacting and scenarios and stuff. It was great.
Yeah, so it would have been, in Lid, Ivan Lid, down...
Yeah, I can't remember even where it was
Kent
now.
Way.
Yeah, it was in Kent, definitely. Yeah, it was in Kent because we were based at Dover at the time and it was within Kent, so it must be the same area. Yeah.
Like you say, it was hard going and... It was over the summer, so I remember it being just excruciatingly hot and just the public order training is hard going, isn't it? And if you get the opportunity to be on the other side and represent the Civ Pop, you're giving it to them, aren't you? You're giving it to the other company. That was great. Went out to West Belfast and it was good to finally get on tour. So I was 18 at the time. Coming to my 19th birthday. Yeah, and we had some quite intense demonstrations and public order incidents, but other than that, it was fairly uneventful. We were getting in the gym. We were allowed out at that point, but there were very strict no-go areas. And it was great just to embed myself within the platoon and get to know the blokes. That was, we come back from there. And I then when the Carders came up, I decided to go to support company.
Yeah.
So I went to the guns. I don't know why I went to the guns. I just think I just saw it as a bit of an alley thing to do.
Yeah, they are. Sport companies anyway, isn't it? Oz Motors as well.
So
strutting around in the black t-shirt.
It is alley, and they're more senior guys, and generally it was a bit more relaxed in the battalion life.
And there's mortars as well. We had our own sergeant major, didn't we? I don't know if the guns did, but we had our own. So we were just totally left alone from everyone whenever we'd gone exercise. Yeah. And you don't really realise now till you look back how good you had it and how much they really looked after you as well, because we had a really tight platoon and you get into a bit of mischief, as I inevitably did, and some of the guys did back then. It'd get sorted out at that level and not really need to get any further outside of that. You get your bollocking within the platoon and
kept it in house.
Kept it in house, yeah.
Yeah, there was a guy, Pete Priest. He would have been in, I think, when he was one of the boxing coaches. He's actually on the boxing team with me, but he was mortars, and as you know, mortars have got their own notorious reputation for being a tight knit, professionally operating platoon. And it was brilliant. Yeah, guns were amazing. It was good to see a different side of soldiering. It was always good seeing the rifle companies crawling around in the mud on exercise when you're stood on a vantage point on with a 50 cal.
Absolutely, yeah.
With a hot brew.
I remember when I was in the support company. I remember looking at the rifle companies and thinking, it's just like being in depot, really. It felt like because the difference of how some of the junior Toms were treated and all the stuff they were doing, because it's fucking horrendous still. On every exercise was horrendous still.
Yeah.
If you're in a rifle company, it's hard going, isn't it? And don't get me wrong, it still was. You still do insertions and extractions and that in support company. But then pretty much once you'd set yourself up, was for mortars anyway, then you'd be kind of contained within a certain area. You're not going to be tabbing off too much then, from where you've set up your baseline.
Yeah, you feel it carrying the heavy tabs that you do, but it was great, and it was just prior to another optelic deployment, so I managed to get back out to Iraq, and it was just a company strength. We went as a machine guns det, and we supported the Royal Anglian Regiment in Basra, which was brilliant. It was good to finally get out in the desert. And it was only, I think it was a 4 or 5 months deployment, so it was a little bit shorter.
That's welcome, though. Was you expecting to do 6 as well, and then they cut it short?
Yes.
Yeah, we had that in Kosovo as well. They cut it to 2 months. We meant to be there, but we didn't know how long we were going to be there. We thought it was going to be 6 or 4 or whatever. Yeah. And then we were back after 2. It was Ali was like, just amazing,
because a 6-month deployment is a long time. Yeah. Even though the Americans, they do like 13 months,
it's
don't
mad,
they?
Isn't it? They do a minimum year, isn't it?
I remember bumping into...
That's real hard going, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, really hard going.
For relationships and your relationship with your children and your missus,
Yeah. There was... so we would go, what do they call it now? Not R&R, Operational Stand Down, or OSD. And there was a US camp just across in the Kuwaiti border. And we went there when we were in Iraq for like a couple of days, and we would speak to the Americans there, and they would tell us how they were like 11 months into a 13-month deployment. One of the guys, he did 2 back to back, so he went back to the States for a short period, and then came straight back out. And he was telling us how he had had like a 2-year-old he'd not really met. So so 6 months didn't seem.
I don't want to do that. Yeah, 6 months with R&R for a week in the middle, don't you? Or a week or 2.
Yeah,
I don't even know how long it would be. But you get a couple of weeks, is it?
I think it's 2 weeks, isn't it?
So I mean, that's a lot more manageable than a year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's brilliant. And so you did all that, and obviously you've got a book coming out, haven't you? Which is called
Beyond the Drop Zone.
So that's brilliant. So is that about your story, or is that about particular events that happened when you were on a particular? Because I don't really know, is it on a particular operation? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what the theme of the book is? I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book covers a fairly traumatic childhood, joining the Parachute Regiment, and then I actually started it. So fast forward a few years, we went into Helmand Province in 2006, which was the first deployment of British troops on Herrick 4.
Yeah, which is the first Herrick, and they called it Herrick 4.
Yeah.
For some reason to confuse everyone.
Yeah, so into Helmand Province.
Yeah.
And I was 20 at the time.
Were you with the support company for that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And it was a extremely kinetic tour. When I come back, it hit me like a freight train. And I suppose that was the catalyst for me starting the book. So, we were in outposts. So I was mostly in a place called Sangin, in the Sangin Valley, in the district centre on the rooftop. And, I didn't realise it at the time, but when I come back from that deployment, at the time my wife was pregnant with my unborn child. So I've sort of really missed most of the pregnancy. And there was a whole sequence of events that followed really that ended up in me getting medically discharged from the military. So I come back from Afghanistan. I was diagnosed with cancer. I got diagnosed with skin cancer.
Shit.
And then shortly after that, I began pissing blood, basically. So I was 21 at the time, and I thought the cancer had spread to my organs, essentially, and I was going to die. So I thought, geez, I've survived all that over there, and there was a lot to digest. I'm gonna die of cancer, basically. So as well as that, I was struggling with a lot of the things that happened. I just couldn't quiet the voices in my mind. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking extremely heavily, and it all accumulated in a failed suicide attempt. So yeah, that was a catalyst for me seeking the help that I did need, even though I didn't realise that I needed it.
What happened with the failed suicide attempt?
So when I felt like I was in a perpetual dream. Nothing felt real. I just felt so disconnected with normal life. I just kept thinking about some of the experiences in Afghanistan, and I was drinking, I was not sleeping, and I just felt completely numb, as in... You
had to, though, didn't you? Because if you don't put a distance between you and reality, and you're associating properly with what's going on, you are gonna go mad.
Yeah.
You can't, you're not going to be able to cope with what's going on. It's a coping mechanism, definitely, isn't it? And you hear from a lot of the men that go through, a lot of the blokes that go through a lot of very similar, situations.
And at the time, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was just being weak, but I just felt so emotionally numb. And so I did it was quite a warped way of thinking. So I used to order videos off the internet of people being executed. So, and I wasn't sleeping.
Why?
Because I wanted to feel, I wanted there to be an emotional response.
You'd be watching horrendous things, horrific things to try and get some type of emotional response going within yourself.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know where it come from, but...
Was that something you'd be doing quite a lot as well then, after a bit, almost like an obsession or just a one-off?
Yeah. So I'd order all these, and they were old VHS, like video cassettes.
Snuff movies.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I was drinking all night because I didn't want to sleep, because I just used to have these horrendous nightmares and flashbacks. And in the day, I was just wandering around aimlessly, drinking a lot. So my missus would go to bed at night, and I would just watch these videos all through the night, relentlessly. And you couldn't get them in the UK, and they're just people being executed in all kinds of horrendous ways. Set on fire, stoned to death, beheaded. And I would sit and just drink, and I'd focus on every detail in the dark, and I just didn't feel anything. It didn't make me sad. It didn't make me angry.
Would you look forward to watching them?
It was
or would you feel like a dread feeling? Or what was it like when you were doing it?
It felt like something I had to do, and it just became a habit. I would just get really pissed, and then she would go to bed, and that was when I would just get my collection out, put it in the video, and I would just sit and watch it and drink until I passed out, basically.
Did your missus know what you were doing?
Yeah, she knew. She'd always say, "Oh, are you all right?" Because I was just constantly in a dream, and I was figuring it all out as I went along, and I was still being investigated for the cancer and for the piss and blood.
So you didn't know you were clear on that either?
No, so
as far as you're concerned, you're dying.
Yes, yeah.
And you've got all this baggage from that unresolved PTSD, undiagnosed PTSD.
And this was I was 21 at the time.
You're a kid,
so it's just a lot.
Kid, isn't it? You don't realise how young you are really at 21 till you get a bit older, and you've got 21-year-old sons. Yeah.
It was a lot to take on, and it was inevitable, really. And then I started having these thoughts of, do I really want to be here at all? I couldn't see a future for myself just because of how I was feeling. And one evening we had some friends over. It was actually my sister-in-law, and we were drinking in the kitchen, and I started play fighting with my sister-in-law, and everything was fine. We'd had a lot to drink, and we were play fighting in the kitchen, and we were shadow boxing and kind of like sparring each other playfully. Yeah. and I was holding my guard up, and I was saying, you can hit me. And she was punching me, and she caught me with one punch on the side of my head, and it hurt. It was painful, and it was the first thing I'd felt in months, and it was pain.
Oh, that was a noticeable
physical pain
moment where you actually thought, oh, I can feel something.
Yeah, and then out of nowhere, it was as though months of emotions just they just come out of me, and I clenched both of my fists, and I just started leathering myself. I just started punching myself in the face.
That must have been horrific for the people that were around you.
They were watching it, yeah, and she did say,
why? Because you thought, I want to feel more again. I've felt something. I want to feel a bit more again. Is that what's the logic for that?
Yeah, it was the first time that I felt anything emotionally, and I was crying uncontrollably. I think it all just came out. So I was punching myself in the face, and I like bust my nose, and my mouth was full of blood, and I was just crying and punching myself. And my brother-in-law, he was sat at the other side of the kitchen. He leapt up in the kitchen. He leapt up, ran across the room, and he threw both of his arms around me like a bear hug to stop me from hurting myself.
Yeah.
And
to restrain you, or to hug you, or
no,
both?
Yeah, to just stop my hands from hitting myself. And we fell against the kitchen cabinet against the side, and as luck would have it, I looked up and I could just see the handle of the kitchen knife. So I pulled it out of the wooden holder, and I just started cutting at my wrists in front of everyone. Was that an intention to kill yourself, or would you think it was a cry for help? Yeah, I think it was a cry for help. Although I'd thought about killing myself, I'd thought about what ways I could do it. In that moment, it was just pure rage, sadness, and the opportunity presented itself, and it was probably a cry for help. So there was, there's blood everywhere, and I'm just crying uncontrollably, and it must have been horrific for them to watch.
Sounds terrible, yeah. Someone that you love and care about, to see them in so much distress and pain.
And later on, my wife at the time said she thought she was going to die that night.
What, she thought she was going to die?
Yeah,
why?
She just said she'd never been as scared as she was. And
she thought from the level of just from being scared?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, the anger was always directed at myself, but she just said she'd felt so scared. And I just replied to her with probably one of the most callous things I could have said. And I just said, welcome to my world. And that was really the start of me getting help.
Yeah.
So yeah, she called the guard room. As luck would have it, one of my mates was a guard commander. He probably should have called the police. I managed to stem the bleeding just through.
How bad were you?
It wasn't too bad. I'd not cut any tendons, but it was bleeding quite a lot. And and he stayed with me that night. And then she contacted the medical officer at the med center, and they referred me to a psychologist.
Yeah.
And it was what I needed, really, even though I didn't know it at the time. And that was how the book started, because he said to me, because I said there's so many occasions where I should have died
when on tour. Yeah.
So, I mean,
and you thought you were dying anyway.
I thought I was dying. And I said, I can't remember all, because I spent 50 days in Sangin. Out of those 50 days, the Taliban were trying to overrun that compound every single day. Yeah. I've still got the contact chart at home, and out of 50 days, I think there's 2 days where it wasn't attacked in some way, shape or form.
And what was that? What did that feel like?
Well,
because I mean, a lot of blokes have served, and a lot of people have been on tours. Yeah. But I know that a few people and a few companies in particular had it hard, a lot harder than others as well, didn't they, on particular tours where they were hounded and contacted relentlessly every day. So obviously you were one of those. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And what was the catalyst to obviously cause you to try and kill yourself?
So I'll do my best. And so to begin with, it's what we all joined for. We wanted that. We wanted to.
You want a bit of it, don't you? But do you want it every day for 50 days?
Yeah, and we did. There's the old adage of just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think I didn't really realize. I didn't see it in myself, because you just, like, as you do as paratroopers, you adapt to your environment, don't you? And there was points in that where I felt like I was going to mentally break down, just because I was so, it was just so intense at times. And there was a couple of occasions where, where I shouldn't be here. So one occasion, just as an example of several, at one point in those 50 days, we would listen to ICOM chatter, which was a radio frequency that our interpreters would listen to, and it was the same frequency as the Taliban. And they announced that they had brought some long barrels over, and they had some foreign fighters come over, and we knew that meant that they had mortars. So up to this point, it was very conventional warfare. RPGs, small arms, automatic fire. They would fire 107mm Chinese rockets at the safe house,
ineffectively or effectively.
On one occasion, they killed 3 people. The other side of a wall. 2 British military guys and an interpreter. But for the majority of the time, they were wide. They missed wide, or and then that would usually be followed by small arms fire, RPGs, that sort of thing. So we heard over the radio that their friends with barrels were getting ready to fire. So as you do, you get told to stand to, and you position yourself at the gun positions, because you know that most likely an attack on the compound is going to follow the mortars. And a friend of mine, Nick, and I, we are in our position on the rooftop, and it's fortified with sandbags. We're at the 50 cal, and we're looking out to the horizon. And every bit of me is screaming to want to run away from that position.
Your whole human instinct.
It's just not. Yeah, it's not a natural feeling, but we stay there, and all of a sudden we heard a discernible thud, and it just an audible thud. We look at each other inquisitively, and we put our head through past the gun over the sandbag. We're on the first floor, and we're looking at the ground. And there's an 82mm mortar smoking on the ground, and the actual bomb itself had hit the sandbag like 3 feet from our heads. The same window we're looking out of, and for whatever reason, it didn't detonate. It was a dud round. It should have killed everyone in that building, and we didn't realize at the time. I was smoking quite heavily at that time, and took 2 fags out of my pocket, lit one, give it to Nick, lit the other, put it in my mouth. Made a joke
about it.
And we were just like, he indicated to where his morphine was. As you know, you always use someone's morphine on them, and you keep yours for yourself. And I did the same, and we kind of laughed it off.
Yeah. I knew that's what you was going to say, because that's what you do, isn't it? The most extreme of things. If it's a narrow miss, jokes are flying around within an instant, aren't they? Which is definitely a coping mechanism, and obviously a nervous thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and there were so many other times, and it was only when I got back that I start to reflect on some of these experiences, and it just became.
When you're in bed, have you heard of like the chimp paradox? Like when you're asleep, your human brain is asleep and your chimp brain's awake, and that's a very negative thought patterns that happen, where you're thinking of all the bad things that had happened to you, and get all these negative thoughts that happen. It's always in bed, isn't it? You're never lying in bed thinking of nice things. you know, when you're in bed, that must have been a time when all these things were cropping up and you'd think, oh shit, how close was that? And would that happen a lot post-tour?
Yeah. So that was part of the reason for me drinking so heavily.
Because you didn't want to get to bed and didn't want to be facing all those thoughts that were coming up,
My MO was to get, you know, absolutely blind drunk until I passed out, and then I didn't have to confront any of these thoughts, these
and they're
demons.
not going away, though. They're just getting pushed down, aren't they? And this is what soldiers do a lot, isn't it? Especially paratroopers.
Yeah.
I think especially now, since post Afghan, when it became quite apparent that a lot of the blokes had suffered quite severely over there from PTSD. Because when I was in the 90s and early 2000s, before that had happened, there was only really the Falklands that had been like recent, and that was a shorter event. It was horrific, obviously, some of the stuff the guys did. But the battles were probably, you know, a day or two, weren't they? And then they'd be obviously marching off to maybe go to another one or in preparation for it. But some of the guys from Afghan were sustained firefights for months, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it was really apparent, and there obviously must have been PTSD from the Falklands, bloody hell. But absolutely, I think it wasn't really recognised back then, was it? And almost frowned upon, probably, being Power mentality, like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? Get a grip of yourself.
Yeah.
That's not the case now, though, is it? People recognise that, and people are able to are they able to give them the help you need, do you think, or do you think they're way off from that?
So I think if, especially at a young age, if you're exposed to so much chronic, acute stress, it's going to manifest itself in the body in some way, or the mind, whether it's, you know, illness, mental health issues. And I mean, I personally felt at the time that I couldn't really, it was a weakness to speak to any of the blokes about it, but I do know since kind of going public with the book and just hoping that people can learn from some of the experiences that I've had, people have approached me and they said, you know what, when I left the Reg, the same thing happened to me, or something similar. And so I started writing the book, and the psychologist said, it wasn't a book, he said, because I said, there's so much that happened, I can't remember half of it. I have to look back at the contact chart, and I think.
Then did you speak to people around you as well to try and get information on a bit more details, so you weren't miles off from? Since when you're like fine tuning your book.
And what happened was, when I started writing, he said it was a form of CBT, and I was medicated as well at that time. He said, "Don't worry about the writing, don't worry about grammar, don't worry about, just write it, just get it on paper." And so that was really where it come from. So since then, I left the military. I was medically discharged with complex post-traumatic stress. The skin cancer I was diagnosed with, I had two surgeries, and they managed to get everything out, all the melanoma out without any chemotherapy, although I was considered high risk. And the issue with the piss and blood, it turned out it was a completely separate thing. I had a kidney disease, a chronic, unrepairable kidney disease that I had to contend with later on in life.
That's a lot better than dying, though, isn't it?
But absolutely. And I'd take that any day.
Yeah.
And so when I left, I had this account of what had happened on that rooftop, and I didn't do anything with it. And since leaving the Parachute Regiment, I had a 10-year career on the close protection circuit. And it was only when my kidneys failed completely, I went into complete renal failure in 2017. And as luck would have it, my sister, who sacrificed her childhood to raise me as her own, she gave me a kidney in 2017, saved my life. And when I was lying on the bed, waiting to go in, I thought, if I survive this, I'm going to, not just Afghan, everything, all the demons, I'm going to put them in a book and I'm going to publish it, because if nothing else, I can give it to my son, who he's 17 now. And also there's stories in there of guys that either were fatally wounded, they didn't come home, or the growing number of people that have succumbed to their demons when they leave. And we all know people that, that's happened to. So, I thought, whether the writing is good or not, if it helps one person, it's worth it for me.
So you initially did the book for your own therapy, really, was it? Like a cathartic way of like getting rid of it, getting it all off your chest. And then it was really just to kind of help the blokes. And then what happened to make you kind of publish it? What's the name of the book as well, just for people listening?
So it's called Beyond the Drop Zone. Beyond the Drop Zone, a paratrooper's story. And what's important, I think, is that I feel like, well, I know my story is not special. It's no different to most people that, you know, have served in the Reg, and there's always people that have done more tours and experienced more. But this was my unfiltered voice and my experience that I wanted to share with other people in the hope that somebody can learn something from it. Because, you know, despite all the setbacks I had, I did find a way to get over the PTSD, although it still exists. But
but in a manageable way now. Yeah. Do you think it ever goes then? Or, because when post Afghan, you've seen a lot of people in a really bad state, didn't you? For like the time it was going on, and then for the couple of years gone after. But it does look like a lot of the blokes have settled down and have managed to kind of find their footing again in life. You know, would you say that you're kind of mostly recovered? Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say recovered. I mean, I have bad days and good days, but I'm in a position where I know myself better. I know what my triggers are. I know what my coping mechanisms are. You know, I know that if I keep myself fit, I put the right foods in my body, I prioritize sleep, I'm setting myself up for failure. I'm setting myself up for success.
Yeah. And on the opposite side of stuff, if you go on the piss or do anything you shouldn't do for too long,
you start to
demons are coming out. Yeah, you got that neurosis and that anxiety that comes with lots of drinking, doesn't it? You know, do you still drink though, but in moderation? And
I mean, I've had my relationship with alcohol has been a challenge because my mother is an alcoholic. It runs in the family, and you join the Reg at a young age. You're fit, aggressive, and you drink. You're probably the fittest alcohol dependent athletes in the world. But I absolutely have. And I think when I went back out to the Middle East as a consultant in the security industry, and I had long periods away, and I changed my relationship with alcohol and
got a grip of it as well. That's good.
And like you said, what you said, you were bang on when you said alcohol doesn't fix anything. It just masks it. Those demons still need to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. So,
and I think when you're drinking, if you're drinking just to cover them up, that's a problem. But I think once if you're drinking for fun, social engagements, and it's not overtaking your life, then that's managed. It's okay. Yeah, I like to do that still. Do you know what I mean? I'm away Arnhem for the 80th anniversary in a couple of weeks, and I will certainly be drinking substantial amounts for a few days, and I'll be feeling like shit for a few days afterwards, and I'm aware of that. But that's not my normal daily routine, though. You can get lost in that, can't you? I think you find people, even if they've not been through the trauma you've been through, which has been horrendous, obviously, from what I'm hearing, just to have been in the Parachute Regiment and to have been that type of character is hard work to sustain sometimes. And when people come out of the military, it's not a user-friendly character either sometimes, is it? When it comes to like parenting, being in relationships with people, working for other people, because you're quite straightforward with what you think's right and you don't mind telling people. You're very aggressive, you deal with things in a non-PC way. So I just think even people that have been in the Reg and might not have even been on tour or been on any type of operations can still struggle on the rehabilitation back into being a civvy again, can't they? So, right. Unfortunately, mate, we've run out of time now.
No worries.
I could speak to you for another hour. It's really interesting to hear your story and to meet you and to get to know you. So, just to finish off, then, what's your plans moving forwards?
So, well, first of all, I should start by saying I don't, consider myself a victim whatsoever. Everything that I've experienced has built my resilience, and I've used to sort of helped me in other areas of my life. And I'm, you know, internally grateful for the opportunities and a second chance of life that I've had. I'm now an operational firefighter, which is a job I absolutely love.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of, I really enjoy writing. I'll always write, and I'd recommend it to any veterans and anyone, in fact. You don't have to do anything with it, but just to make sense of your thoughts, to get them down on paper, even if you do nothing with it. So yeah, I'll continue doing, you know, the career that I love, and every opportunity, if I get a chance to tell my story and perhaps help somebody else, then I'll jump at that.
Brilliant, mate. Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's been a privilege.
All the best, buddy.